Welcome to the Honest Youth Pastor YouTube channel, the channel that helps believers use biblical discernment in all aspects of life. I am your host, Michael, the Honest Youth Pastor. Welcome. This week, we're going to do what we do every single week in helping you discern sermons that you watch and or hear online. Today, we are looking at a sermon by somebody named Chuck Allen from a church, I think it's Sugar Hills Church. Regardless, down in the description below, if you want to watch this whole sermon without my commentary, link will be down there for that. Also, a couple other links down there. The first one I'm going to mention is the Patreon link. If you want to support what we do, get these videos early and ad-free, that is the way to do that. And a little perk of being a Patreon is that you can suggest a sermon for us to review, and that bumps it all the way to the top, such as with this one, a patron. Join the Patreon, and we're now going to review one of the sermons they suggested. So the reason we can do this is because it doesn't matter if it's a well-known pastor or not a well-known pastor. We can apply this method, and hopefully we do, to every sermon we hear. So what is the method? Well, in case you are new here, each week we look at sermons from all over the place, from different pastors, different churches, and we ask three specific questions. One, do they read the text? Two, do they exegete that text, bringing out the culture and content for the modern believer to make it applicable? And three, do they preach the gospel of Jesus Christ? These are like bare bones, low bar things, but each week that's what we look for in the sermon. Try to overlook methodology, things like that, and look for just those three things. Now, if you want to do that at home or at your local church, down below, there's a free PDF guide that you can download to do that. Or if you want a more organized version, this was actually also a patron's idea. We have a bound 52-week sermon review, a journal, and it's just all it is the sermon review guide, only it's in bound form, so you can kind of keep those organized. That link will be down in the description below. So, hey, I think we can get into it. If you do watch this sermon on your own, I do want to let you know it's starting at 47 minutes into their video. That's where this sermon technically starts. So let's hop over to the sermon review screen. And we're going to start at that. So we're at 47 minutes in. The end of the video is an hour and 26 minutes. So, we have roughly a pretty good sermon as far as length goes. I do want to say I haven't watched this. I don't normally watch any of the sermons review beforehand. And secondly, I've never heard of this pastor before, and these are, to be honest, some of my favorite ones to review, because I have no preconceived notion going in at all. I don't know. Even though a patron suggested this, patrons suggested some absolutely terrible sermons to review, as well as some really good ones. So it's always sort of like a roll of the dice. So I am so intrigued and so excited because I don't know what I'm getting. I have no clue. So let's go ahead and hop into it and see what we get.
Series and called Imagine Even More. We're talking through Nehemiah. And if you go back a few weeks, Nehemiah's story starts like this. He's in a foreign land. He's a cupbearer, a food server to a king in another kingdom. His brother comes to see him, and his brother tells him that things back in their hometown in Jerusalem are not going well, that the wall around Jerusalem and the gates have been torn down and burned, and it's all in rubble. And Nehemiah is brokenhearted over his town. And the reason he's brokenhearted is that in the Old Testament, this story, this picture about the wall, it's more than just a building. The picture of the wall is a picture of God's providence, God's protection, and God's provision in those people's life. So it's much more than just a building. It's something that they see as a picture and an image of God's blessing in their life, and it's gone, and they've been away in captivity, and they've coming back now to Jerusalem, and they're just walking among rubble. Well, Nehemiah gets this word, and the Bible tells us that Nehemiah does something really interesting back in chapter 1. He first begins to weep over this. He mourns the fact that in his hometown things have fallen apart, and the presence of God has been lost. Then he begins to pray about it, and then he fasts over it, and then God opens up a door, give him an opportunity to talk with the king, in which he's there to please the king, not to bring anything to him. And the king asks him, says, so it looks like you're feeling a little down today. And he tells him about the story, and the king says, what can I do for you? And he says, well, I could use some traveling papers, maybe some lumber, and some time away. And he goes back to Jerusalem, and then he walks among the rubble, and he sees how bad it is. He does it as night, so nobody can know what's going on. And he begins to pray, God, what's a plan for how you'd want to use me to rebuild this? And they begin this process. And the picture of this whole story of Nehemiah is so idyllic in the sense that here in America, it doesn't take long to be able to look around and see the rubble of America as it's all around us. Because let's face it, we are a country right now who is so divided. We are a country who's filled with anxiety and stress and fear. We are a people that really haven't found anything to unify around. And in many ways, if you listen to the news long enough, you'll feel like gloom, despair, and agony on me, and everything is over, which is must have been what they felt like. But in the middle of their rubble, they rebuilt.
Okay, so a couple of things here with this opening. Right now, again, I know we're 50 or 47 minutes in or whatever, but this is the opening of the sermon. This is how he's opening the sermon. And so there's a few things that are really interesting with this opener. One, we get a lot of context to Nehemiah. I'm not sure, he hasn't said what chapter we're in yet. I've just got it pulled up ready to go to it. But we're in Nehemiah, and so he gives us some context to what has happened up to the point where he's going to start kind of teaching through, it seems like he's teaching through the book of Nehemiah. And so he gives us a lot of this context, which is great, because so if you've not been in Nehemiah, if you don't even know who Nehemiah is, right? If you don't know any of that, then at least you're caught up. Like, oh, this is what's happening in the narrative so far, which is amazing. He does something really unique here at the beginning. I don't know if I'd say it's unique. It's different than what a lot of people that at least we watch do. Maybe it's not new to you, but he makes the application, instead of waiting to make that application a bit later in the sermon, which I'm sure he probably will, he hooks it in at the beginning. So there's this understanding of like, oh, this is what Nehemiah is looking at. This is what Nehemiah is experiencing. This is what he's going through. And it is not all that different than what you may be feeling, right? So it's not the same thing, clearly, but it is the same feeling you may have of gloom, despair. What are we going to do? And so he sort of emotionally connects with the congregants right away to say, like, this isn't basically what he's saying without saying it, right? So it's not something you're just going to pick up on perhaps, but what he's doing is helping them see that, like, this is going to be helpful for you without just flat out saying that. This idea is that, hey, the feelings that Nehemiah is feeling where we're at in this story are going to be very similar to probably what you're feeling as well. And so it sort of brings us in already before he actually gets to the teaching part, where he's just giving us context, but he's saying, like, don't think this is uninteresting, unapplicable. This is very similar. And so automatically, sort of as a listener, you're at least more intrigued, right? If you don't know anything about it, if you don't care about church, if you're like, I don't know what this has to do with me, he's sort of hooked you a little bit to say, okay, this is still, though, right? Even though it's the Bible, it's Old Testament, you may not know anything about it. It is very adjacent to your particular situation.
But they don't rebuild a building. They rebuild and restore hope. And as they do that, they do it through three primary ways. One, they pray, they worship, and they serve. Now, I would just say it's a model for what we're to do here in our part of this great land. In 52 days, that's all it took. Not a year, not a generation, 52 days. In the midst of rubble and dust, broken stones scattered like the ruins of a dream. And somehow God says, let's build again. That's Nehemiah's story. Not just ancient construction, but divine reconstruction. That's what happens when heaven brushes up against human faith and people say yes to the divine power of Jesus the Lord. Ever wonder why God moves fast when the world expects slow? It took 8 days to go to the moon and back, 13 days for two brothers to give the world wings. It took 94 days for the early church to launch from a handful of frightened believers to a movement that unseated an empire and is still going strong in Sugar Hill, Georgia today. Because when people unite around one holy purpose, heaven doesn't wait. And this isn't just about ancient walls. Friends, it's about our part of the wall, our season, our moment. Right here in Gwinnett County, a city waiting to be restored, a community aching for hope, a church on the edge of something that only God can explain. That same.
This right here, I'll just say that again, this is a methodological critique. So I'll just say that right now. If you're watching this, like, these bullet points are going so fast, I don't know if they're helpful. This is just from just a statement. Take it, leave it, throw it away, don't care, whatever. It's just, these are going so quick. I don't know if anybody is going to remember them, and you definitely can't write them down. I mean, somebody can write them down fast enough. The majority of people aren't even going to try. And so the general idea of PowerPoint or slides or lower thirds is short, concise, memorable. These are just we're just speeding through these.
Spirit that stirred Nehemiah in the rubble, that same spirit is stirring us right now, right here, right now in our midst. You say, well, Chuck, I'm not sure I feel it. Then come be a part of it and begin that process of praying and worship and serving. Like, what if we're standing at the beginning of another 52-day miracle stretched over the next?
I don't know why. I know this is methodological, but it's distracting a little bit. We're still like the piano's still going. I'm not sure why. Usually we have that at the end. We got that on the beginning end now for some reason.
Next 3 years. Because when God's people commit, the impossible becomes inevitable. When we commit to the work. Listen to what Nehemiah says in Nehemiah chapter 6, beginning in verse 15. He says, so on October 2nd, the wall was finished. Just 52 days after we had begun, when our enemies and the surrounding nations heard about it, they were frightened and humiliated. They realized that this work had been done with the help of our God. Listen to me, church. The church today in America, rather than being concerned with how many people we can put in a building, how much money we can raise, or how big a building we can build, without thinking about edifices or trying to have superstar preachers and musicians, what if our job was to go out there into a city and rebuild and restore hope and joy and peace and contentment? What if rather than building a building, we wanted to invest in broken lives becoming whole? What if broken marriages could become whole? What if children off the rails could come home? What if people who are in the midst of challenges and trials could find this was a place where I could belong and I could find belief and I could be a part of something that was radical? It wasn't a miracle of manpower in what they did. It was a miracle of movement.
Okay, so yeah, like, and again, I don't want to, I mean, we're very shortly into this sermon, but when we're talking, like, let's just go here. At the bottom here, it says, hold on a second. There we go. There we go. Made it bigger. All right. So, at the bottom is where he's at. He's here. The wall is finished. And so the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month of Yule and 52 days. And when our enemies heard of this, all the nations around us were afraid and fell greatly in their esteem, for they perceived that the work had been accomplished by the help of our God. So here's a couple of things I think that are worth noting. Everything he said is true. As far as like, hey, instead of putting all this money that we have investing in a building and all of our time into certain things that aren't like incredibly necessarily important, why not be in the community helping rebuild? And then he noted like lives, marriages, things like that, and giving hope that way. Okay, like, yes, 100%. Let's clap for that. Let's do that. Let's be involved in that. That's not what Nehemiah is trying to communicate, though, within that verse. I mean, he's saying, right, that we have, so the wall was finished in a very short amount of time. So we have that sort of caveat there. And when our enemies heard of it, all the nations around us were afraid and fell greatly in their esteem. Why? Because Israel is rebuilding its wall. Contextually, what's happening here is they are fortifying themselves again for attack. This nation is rebuilding. And for any nation around them, that would be a problem. Not even that they're an issue now, but just within these nation states that we have within the context of Nehemiah, you don't need one more enemy. And when somebody starts building walls around their city, they are fortifying it and could be potentially a problem. And so they perceive, and this is the second part of this, they perceive that this work had been done and accomplished with the help of our God. So again, contextually understand this. What's happening is the nations are watching Israel come. They have not forgotten, right? Some of them, that this nation of Israel, these Israelites, or in this case, the southern kingdom, had gods, or they had a God that they worshipped, that they declared the God of over all things. And so this idea is anytime something good was accomplished, the gods were on your side. That was the thought, again, within this context of pagan nations. And so this idea is, hey, this couldn't have accomplished outside of, God showing favor on these people. They're rebuilding their wall. This is why they would fail. Why would they be afraid and fell greatly in their esteem? Why? Well, because this God is helping these people build walls, and that's a problem for them. And so, again, nothing Chuck says here is wrong in regards to like we should be doing these things. I would have a bit of an issue. Like that's not the draw that's directly connected to this. At most, you could make an argument that God is on the side of his people, and therefore when we accomplish things, he gets the glory. It shows his glory to other people, even pagans that don't believe in him, because things are being accomplished quickly and together, and there's a community. Like, that could be drawn from that, but I'm not sure. It wasn't a miracle of manpower, it's a miracle of a movement. It's a little weird. That's a little bit of not what is technically being communicated here. He might save it. I'm just saying, as I'm listening, this is what I'm thinking. I'm like, okay, but right, but is that what Nehemiah is trying to communicate to us?
Ordinary people, just like me and you, ordinary tools that we all have, extraordinary faith, and God got in the mix of it and triangulated. It was no different than like me and Michael saying, let's do this together, and that's, 1 + 1 might equal 3. But all of a sudden, me and Michael get together with God, and 1 + 1 might equal 3 million. What might happen if a church said, let's unify around something that matters, meaning let's restore our part of this great land. Let's restore our schools, our businesses, our communities. Let's restore this church and our families and our homes. Let us be a part of seeing no perfect strategy, no carefully managed timelines, just people who refuse to quit in the name and the power of Jesus the Lord.
Okay, so again, don't know anything about this church at all. This is where maybe contextualization of the message doesn't communicate well the further you get away from it. I don't know who Michael is. I don't know restoration of church. I don't know what any of these things are. Maybe two churches came together, perhaps, and now there's like a restoration of this particular church, and now it's growing when it wasn't before. I mean, it could be anything along those sort of lines. But this is where maybe the message only makes sense to the people that are like within that local body.
Just people who stayed in the rubble when it would have been easier to get away and live in the comfort. People who said, I'd rather be in the dust with God than be in a place without him. I'd rather be in the dust with God than be in a palace without him. Nehemiah didn't build a wall, he built belief. Now, can I just stop and say to you, the day that this church cares more about building a building than we do about restoring broken people will be the day that God takes his hand off this place. Because we shouldn't be about building buildings. We should be about restoring broken lives who have given up on this world, and they need the hope that only Jesus can have. And by the way, you are his plan A. There is no plan B. It is not like you're going to show up in heaven and say, hey, Lord, what was your plan? Like, what was plan B if we didn't get it done? He's going to say, no, you were my plan. In this season, in this time, you were plan A. And you're thinking to yourself, Chuck, I didn't ask to be plan A. Guess what? He didn't ask for your thought. He just said it's your job. Yeah, but Chuck, I kind of like...
The piano's getting a little old, I'll be honest with you. I don't know. I don't know how much longer I can take it. Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the chat, in the comments. Are you a piano, mood person, or are you not? Because I know it's a preference thing. Again, this is methodology. I totally understand. I'm just not that guy, right? If you're playing the piano this entire sermon, I'm like, my brain is going to be fried a little bit. And it's, I'm going to be more negative. I just am. Also, is there a building? Is there people suggesting they need a new building? We've done sermons like this before where we review things and you can tell there's like some tension between the pastor and the people. I'm not saying that's the case here. I'm just saying we've mentioned buildings twice.
Keep my faith silent. Well, he's saying now's the time for you to stop. Now's the time that you actually go outside and make a difference. Because listen, Nehemiah didn't build a wall. He built belief. He turned ridicule into resolve. He turned fear into fuel, and
he did build a wall though for a very specific purpose. Like he did. That is what happened. I mean, if we're gonna use all of this as an analogy, I'm not saying that Chuck here believes it's the whole thing's analogy. I mean, I'm sure he probably believes it's like historical fact, but he's turning like all of the historical fact into analogy at this point.
turned opposition into awe. There's plenty of people to say, little old Sugar Hill, you can't do that. You know, little old Sugar Hill, you don't have that kind of influence. Little old Sugar Hill, you can't make that kind of impact. And all I can say to you is this, day after day after day, you keep showing out there in this country, in this county, in this community, making a difference for the cause of Christ. And people keep showing up in a baptistry, keep showing up in this church, and keep finding hope in the love of Jesus. Can I say that to you? Well done, church. But could I also say to you, do not stop. Do not get lazy. Do not let the community say to you, it cannot be done. Because I'll promise you, the power of God is what this world desperately needs. We do not need more government. We do not need more education. We do not need anything more than more Jesus. And by the way, to do that, we need more people who claim to love Jesus go act like Jesus. You say, well, Chuck, listen, that's kind of harsh. I hope I said it as mean as I could. Because I hope you hear me say the number one reason why people do not turn to Jesus is because the people who claim to love Jesus don't act like Jesus.
I would disagree with that. Like that's definitely not helpful for sure. But there's a lot. I mean, I can think of 2 atheists off the top of my head that I know that would have said, like, Christians are hypocrites. They read the Bible to disprove God's existence, and then God uses that to bring them to Himself. And so it's not that like the Christians being hypocrites were like the number one reason. Like it was, again, it's not helpful. But there's this idea that we as humans, we don't really want to be ruled by God innately. And so, I mean, here we're getting into some theological, like, nuance as far as how you sort of approach that. But I think that's laying the onus for disbelief at the wrong door. Again, Christians not acting like Christians isn't helpful. But then you could get into a whole lot of what does it mean to act like a Christian? I mean, progressives constantly will be like, well, if Christians just did this, everyone would become a Christian. No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. There's still people that would have an issue with even progressive Christianity. And so there's this point to where the onus is really laid at the feet of, will you submit to Jesus or not? You don't get to pick your own Jesus. Will you lay and submit at Jesus' feet? That's where it really is. So again, I'm not trying to nitpick Chuck here. He's just saying things that are like, I'm just a little, they're not terrible. I just don't know how this lines up with Nehemiah.
You say, well, Chuck, that's why I walked away from the church. Well, let me be honest with you. It's why I walked away from the church. I grew up in a church where I saw so much dysfunction. I couldn't believe that the people I saw on Sunday and I wound up seeing on Friday night, and I thought, how did that come together? And my thought is, what if Christians were just the same people in every room and they could just trust God to do something in their life, to take their whacked out life and know that He's going to use it for their good and His glory? And that you don't have to have a perfect story, but you do need a story. Because
that comes down though. See, here's the thing. I have a feeling, I don't mean to be interrupting so much, but it's my show and my channel. I'll do what I want. I think this is where discipleship comes into play, right? Right? It's just understanding. I mean, this is really discipleship. It's this idea of consistency, like, right? So Paul confronting Peter about his inconsistency around the Gentile believers, right? You're just not being consistent. It's not like Paul's like, hey, why are you two different people? He's just saying, hey, just stop being stupid, brother. Right? And so this idea, I mean, yeah, there will be people that will leave because of hypocrisy. That's duh. That's why discipleship is important. That's why repentance is important, right? We don't need this hypocrisy, either purposeful or not. So if it's not discipleship that needs to be done, it's church discipline that needs to be done. It's one of the two things. Either you're growing in grace, submitting to Jesus, growing to be more holy, or you know what the scriptures say, you claim to be Christian, yet refuse to repent, then that's church discipline. So it's like two sides of the same coin, but both of these solve the problem. Because even if there are people, right? So let's kind of play out Chuck's scenario here. Even if there are people that are hypocrites, which there are, that hypocrisy, when dealt with within the church correctly, doesn't give the agnostic, atheist, unbeliever any foothold on the wall of, see, you guys are just hypocrites. Because if the church deals with that properly, either through discipleship or church discipline, the church says, no, we've dealt with it. Yeah, that person is definitely hypocritical. We're dealing with it according to the Bible. It's consistency. And so that's why I say laying the whole unbelief, of unbelievers at the feet of Christians because of hypocrisy. You can only technically rightly do that if there is no discipleship and there is no church discipline, because at that point you're not being consistent. But I think there is discipleship, there is church discipline, and that is an attempt at consistency. And so really at that point, believers that aren't either well discipled or believers that aren't really believers because they won't submit to the lordship of Christ are that may be a doorway out of the church for some people because of the hypocrisy. But you see how this all works together. This is why, and again, I'm not saying Chuck doesn't understand any of that. I'm sure he does. I'm just saying that the words we say when we preach are important because they communicate certain things. Back to it.
God wants to take your whacked out, messed out life, and he wants to use it to do something great, to restore this community. He didn't give you a story to hide it. He gave you a story to tell it. Yeah, but Chuck, my story is bad. Mine is too. Mine's horrible. You know what I've learned? How cool is it that you can talk with people whose lives are messed up and you know what it's like, and you can just say, but God he ain't done with me yet, man. And he's not done with you. Sugar Hill Church, listen to me. Faith doesn't wait for conditions to change. Faith changes our conditions. And obedience, well, it might cost you now, but it pays in eternity. Maybe that's where we are. Maybe this is our rubble moment. God's whispering, build again, invest again, believe again, but don't go build in bricks and mortar. Go build into people. Go build into old people that are alone. Go build into students who feel like they have no hope. Go build into people that are lonely. Go build into people that are anxious. Go care for people who need food. Go help people find a home. And by the way, when you do that, let them belong to you before they have to worry about what they believe, because when they belong, it's a lot easier to believe. And stop screaming at people who don't believe what you believe.
Okay, so hold on. I guess I was wrong. I was hoping this was to be better than it's turning out to be. I had hope. This may be methodological. Let me know. Let me know what you think. I am opposed to the belong before you believe thing, depending on how you play it out. You can't belong to the church unless you believe. This is just an historical Christian reality. That to belong to the church is to believe the things that the church teaches. And so you can attend, you could participate, you can do all those things, but you don't belong, right? So this is like, let me give what could be a bad analogy, but I think it's okay. Like, it sounds okay in my head, so we'll just kind of go through it. This is like dating someone, right? So if when I was dating my wife, I was over at the house, I was hanging out with them. We were playing board games. We went, they took me on a trip one time. We had dinner together a lot. Like, there were all sorts of things that I attended and I was a part of, but I didn't belong to the family, right? I had no familial connection. There wasn't a marriage there. And so there was a lot of things I got to do and see, and I liked how they operated. It was I was like, look, you guys love each other. You take care of each other. Like, that was just apparent. And so that wasn't like why I married my wife. I married my wife because I loved her. I love her. But it was, that was like a benefit. right? And so one of the things is when you get married, now when you're marrying someone, you're sort of bringing on their family as well. I know a lot of you don't like that idea. Maybe you don't agree with that idea, but that's the reality. Like you are like now you're connected to these people in a way you weren't connected to them before. And that's a lot like this whole idea of belong and believe. There's a lot of people that can attend churches, they can, go to events with you, they can have dinner with you, they can do all sorts of things, but they don't belong to that family yet until they believe. Just like you don't belong to that family until you marry someone from that family. And so, I'm sure you can find holes in that analogy, but I think that communicates what I'm trying to say. So this whole belong believe thing is a little weird. Yeah, you should love on people, you should help them. Like the Christian one of the Christian virtues is generosity and care. And so you do those things because you understand what God has done for you. So this is an outpouring of do unto others as God has done to you. Yeah, do all of those things, but that doesn't innately mean they belong before they believe and they're a part of it. They get to experience it, much like I got to experience my wife's family before I belonged to them. They got to see all of the good and they got to see some of the bad. And they said, I still want to be a part of this. Like this Jesus you talk about, this change I see in your life, the way you treat one another, like I want to be a part of this. Then you belong, but you believe. And that's what brings you in to the family. And so this belong before you believe thing, depending on how you define it, is either complete garbage or, hey, you understand it. Um, yeah. I just feel like Chuck's conflating this caring for others and what that kind of looks like in regards to like Christian stewardship of like our belongings and how they belong to the church and like I don't know. There's no clear distinctive lines, and I have no clue. Man, I feel like we've really gotten away from Nehemiah, though we were barely there. But let's see. Let's just keep going.
Believe and love them into the kingdom. Nobody wants to be screamed about how messed up their life is. They need to be loved on. You say, but Chuck, I like screaming at people.
Just as look, I'm just gonna keep going as a story. There are people in my wife's family that before I ever belonged to that family, um, I got bonked in the head a few times because of some like stupid comments that I said or maybe some stupid thing I did. I was bonked on the head in love because they understood one, either whether you're gonna stay here around us or not, whether you're gonna marry, her or not, this is still a stupid thing to do. Or if you are gonna be a part of this family, you need to understand before you get in here that you don't do that. And so I don't know. I don't know, Chuck. Sometimes confronting people is good.
You like it when I scream at you? No. You know what? The world's in desperate need of somebody who loves Jesus to come along and say, how can I help you? How can I love you? Is it okay if I stop and pray for you? I'd just say to you, church, is it because of the miracle? No, it's because of your ability. No, it's because of your availability. God doesn't need your perfection. God doesn't need your show. God doesn't need you to dress up like a Christian and try to walk like a Christian and try to act like a Christian. God doesn't need you to try to watch your language. God doesn't need you to try to worry about what you drink. God doesn't have to worry about what you smoke. Listen, what God wants is for you to love him and let him have your heart and let him worry about all the rest of it, because all I'm here to do is let you know apart from Jesus, you don't have a prayer, and with him, you can accomplish all things.
Yeah. I mean, if you're talking about discipleship, yeah. What I mean by that is this. My pastor said something that was really intriguing one time is that when somebody got saved, there's this guy named Chad. He got saved and Chad smoked a lot and like a lot of cigarettes and other things. And Chad got saved and he kept coming to church every Sunday because he got saved. And he'd go outside either mid-service or after service and smoke for the longest time. And my pastor said that people would like come to him and be like, "Hey, you need to tell Chad to stop smoking." And my pastor's point to them was pray for him and the Holy Spirit will take care of it. Like, just pray. He'll if he's around the body, participating in the body, the Holy Spirit will convict him. And because smoking wasn't one of those things where it's not like Chad was fornicating or, he wasn't a drunkard, he wasn't a thief. Like this was just something that he did. Obviously, you approach things differently depending on how the Bible talks about them. And Chad did stop smoking. The longer he hung around the community, he just stopped smoking all sorts of things because he read the Bible, he was convicted, and he was around other believers. So if that's what Chuck means, yes. If Chuck means, like, I just feel like if I was there and I just got saved and I was smoking some whatever, and he's like, you don't got to worry about your smoke. He's like, cool, Jesus is cool with me doing that. Like, I don't think that's what Chuck means. I'm just saying, again, as someone that speaks in front of people on a fairly regular basis, I have learned that I have to be very careful about what I say and very clear of how it could be perceived. Because people are going to take things certain ways.
This is the story. That's why we're about the restoration business. That's why we're not in the perfection business. You see, when the world sees risk, faith sees revival. Every brick, every prayer, every gift becomes part of something bigger. God takes limited hands and creates limitless impact, including yours. That's how Imagine Zero turned into debt-free reality. 14 years ago, this church had $8.5 million worth of debt, running about 600 people and trying to figure out, what are we going to do? And I look back now, and it took a people of faith to say, we could imagine zero, and got debt-free and worked our way out of it. And that took a lot of sacrifice, a lot of service, a lot of prayer, a lot of worship. It took a lot of sacrifice and got there. But we said, let's do Imagine Zero so we could imagine even more for the kingdom. And we're trying to double our kingdom impact over the next 3 years. You say, well, why, Chuck? I mean, don't we have plenty of people? Not when there's plenty more out there that don't know Jesus. Every time I ride on Sunday on the way up here and I see some cat out there cutting his grass, my first thought is, I ain't mad at him. I just want to know how come one of us hadn't told him, come on with me. Every time I see somebody sitting, having brunch, headed in there at 10:30 on a Sunday morning, I think, I'm not mad at them. Bless the Lord. I love me some French toast with that vanilla and the honey butter on it. And you get the syrup that melts over it when you take it. It drips down your chin and it gets all over your shirt. And then you got the bacon that's greasy and it's crispy, and it might even have a little brown sugar on it. When you bite it, you just think, bless the Lord, oh my soul. And it totally changed. I'm in for all that, right? But listen, I'd rather have that and Jesus. That's how Imagine Even More becomes a revival story. What could 3 years of obedience change in this place? 52 days changed that city. What could 3 years do in hours? I will say, though.
Okay, so that seems to be the connection that's happening here. There may have been some announcement beforehand that we missed by scrubbing ahead to the sermon, but it seems like there's a campaign. So they've paid off their building, which is probably why he's like, we ain't building another one, fam. But now there's another campaign, which is 3 years of evangelism, perhaps is what it sounds like. And so he seems to be using the idea found at the end of verse 15, which is that it only took 52 days, to sort of like use that as a jumping point, perhaps, into this idea of like, hey, we need to evangelize. We want to see the kingdom grow. We want to see people come to Jesus. Which isn't like, I get it. I just don't know, like, if that's, yeah.
They didn't just pray and they didn't just serve, they worshiped. Nehemiah says in chapter 12, verse 27, for the dedication of the new wall of Jerusalem, the Levites throughout the land were asked to come to take part in this joyous occasion with songs of thanksgiving and with the music of cymbals and harps and lyres. And the joy of the people of Jerusalem could be heard far away. I am always amazed. I make no apologies for being a Georgia Bulldog fan. I bark like the best of them. I go to Athens and I bark for 3 straight hours. I'm the biggest fool in the world. I bark like a wild man, right? Some of y'all go down to Tech and I don't know what y'all do, about buzz or something, but whatever y'all do, I think that's awesome. We go to a Braves game and go, we do all that stuff. And then we show up at church and we stand here like, no, I'm reverent here. You're not reverent anywhere else in the world. And by the way, reverence in worship is not the same as showing up and being reverent in a funeral home. Because this is not a funeral home, and this is not a funeral. This is a celebration of a life and many of them. This is a celebration of where Jesus shows up and says, we are not done. We will keep going because his work is not done this side of his second coming. And when
So see, this is helpful, right? Okay, so even though I don't think we're going back to Nehemiah, I think we've pretty much, I think he's maybe exhausted that. Maybe we do. I mean, we've still got 26 minutes in this, so maybe we will. But this is where I can appreciate, like, so Chuck is clearly excited, dedicated, desires for people to know Jesus. And we can appreciate that, right? That is obvious through his whole talk so far, through everything he said, that has permeated everything. Have we stuck to the text? Not really. We didn't even really read that much of it. But that is, I mean, he loves people and he loves Jesus. So there's a golden nugget there that we can pull out as far as that goes. So let's see kind of, I mean, that's what he seems to be trying to rah-rahing them up for. Is like, hey, there's a job to do. There's a mission to accomplish. There's people that don't know Jesus. Let's bring him in. That's the positive overarching message so far.
When that happens, we'll be in glory and it won't matter. They say, until then, Chuck, what's my job? Finish the wall. Well, Chuck, what's the wall? How many people out here need Jesus? How many students need to know Jesus? How many people contemplating suicide need hope? How many families in distress need peace? How many folks living on the edge of anxiety and stress and frustration need to know that there is a better way? These people sang it finished. They didn't just pray and they didn't work. They sang while they worked. And they got after it. I mean, seriously, y'all wonder, why does Chuck want us all excited? Is Chuck like this closet charismatic? I'm not in the closet at all. I am. I am not in the, if you come out of the closet, I came out because I believe worship should be wide stinking open. You know why? Jesus is dying for his church to come alive. Dying for his church to come alive. Not to stand here like a bump on a log and think at the end of the day, let's just be sweet. You know what? The church has tried to be sweet for decades, for centuries. And you know what's happened? We've let culture run all over America because we didn't get out there in the mix.
I'm interested to see like how he would wait. Because so he just said not too long ago, like, don't yell at people. Don't like, do you like it when I yell at you? But then, like, this part here sort of counteracts. I'm sure there's a balance here. I'm sure there's a balance. I'm just saying what I'm hearing and what I'm trying to process with Chuck saying. He just said, like, don't yell at people. Don't, like, be mean. But then also don't let culture run all over you. But culture, as soon as you say, like, it feels to them, whether it's true or not, that you're running all over them. And there's not necessarily a way to prevent that. It's just, I'm just saying, like, which one? Do you want both? We can do both. We're supposed to do both.
That city had been silent for so long, but on that day, drums and strings and laughter, and I mean, people just excited about what God had done. Joy could be here from miles away. Listen, I long for the day here that folks that are sitting at Rushing Trading at 11:20 a.m. having their third cup of coffee, holding that seat up for the people waiting in line, I hope they hear our worship and think, I wonder what's going on over there. Because you got so fired up, you couldn't help but be a part of changing this community. By the way, if you're having one of those days, crank up that song, I Know a Name, and see if you can stay that way. Because all the way in this morning, I sang like a crazy man. And y'all have heard me try to sing. I can't sing a lick. But you know what I kept thinking? Dead things come alive. I thought, let's go. I love to see dead things come alive. I see men every Monday night come alive, and I'm watching guys saying, I don't know jack about the Bible, but I now know Jesus. Let's go. Not an amen on that one? I got to pick this game up a little bit. Joy could be heard from miles away. The wall was proof that God kept his promises. Nehemiah, those people, they celebrated with sound. Listen to me. Sugar Hill ought to celebrate in story. Every baptism, every student who finds Jesus, every neighbor that's served, every family that's restored, each one is their own cymbal crash of grace. Our noise ought to be gratitude. Our melody ought to be mercy. Our harmony ought to be hope.
I'm going to guess that this dude's a writer. Okay, I mean, just based on, again, I mean, he's had a bunch of these, like these sort of, I don't know what they're called. I'm sure there's some literary word for them in which they sort of flow together. They don't rhyme, but you can see kind of like there's a sequence there. He's had a bunch of those. We've had more of those than we have the Bible at this point. And again, not saying that's bad. I'm just saying I'd rather have the Bible. Again, this may not be a normal service. Maybe it's just a rah, here's a new campaign service, and that would make a little sense maybe. No, hold on. Where are we at on time? Let me see. 20 minutes left. And again, this may not be a full 20 minutes. Maybe there's songs at the end or something. Okay, so I just want to, let's level set real quick. One, I very much deeply appreciate, and this is going to outweigh all the negative, but I deeply appreciate Chuck's desire and love for the Lord and the transformation that Christ brings to people's lives. Apparent. That is more than apparent in everything he said. The piano's sort of driving me nuts. The fact that we're not really kind of teaching at all is sort of kind of driving me nuts. So again, I appreciate, again, the positive outweighs the negative here. Let's just kind of get into the text a little bit. Yeah.
When God rebuilds what's broken, praise becomes the proof. When something happens in your life and you're grateful for it, let your praise show. Well, Chuck, but I just like to keep it inside. You've all got a story. And God did not give you a story for you to put it in a closet and hide it. He gave you a story to pull it out of you to help change a world of people who've got their own story that it can identify with your story and by way identify with Jesus. And you say, well, Chuck, I didn't want my messed up story. Well, guess what? I didn't want mine either, but I know this. He's turned it into a testimony. I don't want to bless people who just found out they got cancer, but I've walked that road. I don't want to talk to people who have lost everything they've owned, but I've walked that road. I don't want to try to talk with messy families that are blended families and their kids are off the rails, but we've walked that road. And you know what I've learned? Every messy story is waiting to be a testimony for Jesus to take you and bring hope into this lost world. That's your story. Do it. Well, but Chuck, this whole worship thing, isn't that what we do after the work? No, it powers the work. It fuels it. Listen, over the next 3 years, trying to double our kingdom impact, we're not giving to a project. We're giving to people. We're not funding mortar. We're fueling miracles. So let's celebrate like miracle makers did. Remember what God has done. Look how far he's brought us. Rejoice with open gratitude. Respond with overflowing generosity, because joy isn't meant to be silent. You go eat at a new restaurant and you love it. You know what you don't do? I'm not telling anybody about it. You take pictures, you post it, you talk about how good it was, and everybody's like, yeah. You get a new car, you know what happens? You don't keep it a secret. You take a picture and look at my new rep. Yeah, you know what? Your kid wins an award. You know what you don't do? Well, I'm just going to be quiet about that one. I've seen your pictures. Come on. What I want to ask you is this. Are you willing to brag on Jesus out there like you do a new car or a great restaurant? Seriously. Gratitude turns a finished wall into a worldwide witness. You say, well, Chuck, I don't talk like you do. I know you talk better than I do. I mean, if you were God, would you let some redneck like me that's got a bad southern accent who cannot public speak, and I get my tongue all tied, I can't follow notes, I walk all over the building, I have to stay here to be focused, I'm completely whacked out, ADD. Who would pick that guy to be pastor of a church? Not me. Because I'm the least likely on the planet, y'all. How much more do you want to use your story? Seriously. I'm looking at a bunch of bright people that have messed up lives, and because of your yes, somebody else will meet Jesus.
So see, I'll pull this out really quick as a distinction, because I've had this discussion with pastors before. There is, and this is why we see in Scripture the qualifications for elder. I think that this is important. When we see elders talked about within the Scriptures, it's usually a plurality of them. It's more than one. And their gift sets. they all have the qualities of being an elder, but if you know, practically speaking, when you're in a room of people that are qualified to be elders, each of them have a little bit of a different gift set. There are some pastors that are so good at shepherding. They love being around people. They love walking with people. They are so empathetic. They are so caring. People want them to be around. And so it's one of those things that, and then some people, to play out my point here, some people are really good teachers and can open the Word of God and just make something that seems so ununderstandable, make it clear to people that are sitting there because they just have a gift to do that. Sometimes you'll get really lucky and you'll get somebody that can do both of those things. But oftentimes you're going to find somebody that he's, the gift set, and maybe it's not even either one of those. Maybe it's just a gift set of leadership or whatever it is. And that is applicable in a needed way in a particular local body. And so I'm going to just throw it out here and guess. Chuck seems to be somebody that is just a shepherd. Just how he's talking, he loves people. He wants them to know Jesus. He loves hearing change stories. He loves the rah, rah, rah. I don't know the Bible, but I know Jesus. Let's get at it. That's what gets him stoked, man. And so it's not that shepherds can't be pastors or teachers. They can be. It's just that oftentimes you're going to have to lean in certain parts of your gift set and not on others. So I say all that to say this. I think Chuck is like a shepherd dude for sure. And oftentimes what I found in shepherds, they aren't great teachers sometimes. I'm not saying Chuck's not a great teacher. I'm just saying that's why I don't think we're kind of going through this scripture in particular. Now, I could be totally wrong. This is one sermon, y'all. This is one sermon. It's hard to make one judgment on one sermon. I'm just saying what I'm seeing. I think that's why we're not going through like we would typically expositionally work through, because the dude's just got shepherd's heart, man. And so he's going to teach it, and that's going to come through the way that, and then there's going to be other guys that are great teachers. And I'll say this to sort of balance this out. Some of these guys are great teachers, and they are not so gifted at the shepherding thing, right? It's not that they're not empathetic. It's not that they don't care. It's not that they don't love people. It's not that conversion doesn't get them all riled up. It's just that that is not their gift. And so sometimes you'll have people in shepherding roles that are not good shepherds, or that's not their gift set per se. And they're going to not be, people will be like, oh, it's I just don't feel like he cares. And he does. It's just not his gift set. And there's going to be other people that preach, and you're like, I just don't feel like he's teaching because that's not his gift set. And so oftentimes in different churches, what you'll have is the perfect blend, in my opinion, as far as a plurality of elders, is some elders that are good at leadership, good at organization, good at finance. Then you'll have a couple that are good at teaching and good at shepherding. I'd say if I had to pick two, if I could only have two elders, I'd have an elder that was really good at teaching and an elder that was really good at shepherding. And I got those two guys working together. That's a good start, because you have people that are cared for and people that are well fed with the Word of God. And so that, I think, is a perfect team, as long as, a start of a really good team. But that's my feeling. I'll just throw that out again. I don't know nothing about Chuck. I don't know anything about this church. I'm basing this on one sermon, but I feel like that's pretty accurate as far as what we're getting from this and what he's really leaning into. Now, again, that has nothing to really do with the sermon review per se. That's just free for you. And if you are going into ministry, that's something just for you to think about. Because you can have people that are really good shepherds that people will tell them they can't preach and they're terrible teachers, and that'll make you feel like maybe you're not qualified for the ministry. It's just not your gift set. So you can lean in and learn. You can balance these out. To be frank with you guys, I am much more of a teacher than I am a shepherd. I have to really lean in to get myself mentally in the place where I let's walk through this, because I just don't work that way. But God has been very gracious to me, surrounding me with a lot of people that are incredibly more empathetic than I am, and have helped me balance that out. And I think, again, There's not that there's no hope. It's just that God will provide and you will learn.
I think we ought to continue the mission. Nehemiah said in chapter 12, verse 43, and on that day they offered great sacrifices, rejoicing because God had given them great joy. The wall wasn't the finish line. We have no finish line. It's a starting gun. Every day is a fresh start. More gratitude, more joy, more service, more sacrifice for the kingdom. Their obedience outlived their generation. I wonder what 25 years from now people at Sugar Hill Church will say about this generation. I'm so grateful 140 years ago, 13 people met across the street and said, let's birth a church. And here we are. I mean, I'm pretty sure my dad, who once was the interim pastor of this church, had helped usher that church from over there, over here to this chapel. I'm pretty sure my dad rolls over in his grave every Sunday when I preach thinking that boy just slaughtered the gospel story. On the other hand, I bet he's thrilled to know that the ministry is still going. And people are still getting saved, and people are still being served. Because it's legacy. It's legacy that begins with faith.
I think that proves my point right there. It was just what he just said.
Faithfulness. Let's be faithful. Because love always expands. It never contracts. It doesn't just close in. Healthy things grow. All these things that we do are not random dots. They're divine connections, because legacy isn't what we keep, it's what we give away. Faithfulness today becomes revival tomorrow. They'll say, this was a church that believed when others hesitated, gave when others clutched, built when others doubted, served when everybody thought the end was here. We're not waiting on God to move. He's waiting on us to move. He's already at work in our community. Let's chase after him and do this. Faith isn't measured by what you say that you believe. I mean, the world is so tired of seeing churches and Christians talk about what they believe, but not living it out there. It is measured by what we're willing to do to step forward in faith. It's like planting a tree. You dig the dirt, you drop in this sapling, you wait, and it doesn't look like much, but years later, shade and fruit and shelter for people that you'll never meet. They're gonna sit under the shade of your faithful ministry and your work. 52 days, that's all it took then. What might God do over the next 3 years? Walls still rise, hearts still turn, cities still wake up to the sound of joy. We are not building buildings, we're building belief. We're not raising money, we're raising faith. We're not waiting for the next move of God, we are his plan. Because when God's people commit, celebrate, and continue, the watching world cannot turn away. The real miracle is the movement of God, and it starts right here. It's not about fundraising, it's about faith raising. When we remove limits on resources, God removes limits on reach, and the sound of rejoicing in our city will be heard far away. It's like the story in Luke chapter 6, where Jesus says, give and you'll receive. Your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and poured into your lap. That's a lot of verbs. That's a lot of verbs in one sentence. Give, receive, return, pressed, shaken, running, poured. It sounds like motion. It sounds like momentum, like something that keeps going long after the moment you started it. It's the picture of a ripple, the kind that starts when one drop hits still water, just one, and suddenly the surface erupts and it wakes up and the circles move outward, each one touching the next. And when you give graciously and generously, you start a ripple. You think you're just helping a ministry. You think you're just feeding families, or you're giving to Sugar Hill Church. But heaven sees something far deeper, far more meaningful. He sees a widening circle that changes the economies of love and provision, and in a way that we cannot humanly grasp, it changes us. You start to live awake. You start seeing opportunities instead of obligations. You start recognizing people as gifts, not distractions. And the wild thing is, the spirit thing is that this ripple never ever really stops, because here we are talking about them thousands of years later, trying to do the same thing so that thousands of years from now, should Jesus tarry, people will come to know Jesus in this place because of what you do right now. That single moment of generosity touches a volunteer who's tired and exhausted and thinks nobody cares, but gets that one burst of energy to keep showing up. Or feeds a mom who feels totally invisible, and she starts to believe that maybe, just maybe, God actually does see her. That in God's economy, giving changes the giver as much as it does the receiver. God's not saying in this text that you're going to get your money back and you're going to earn 15%. What if he gives it back in something that's more valuable, like peace and joy, fulfillment and contentment? What about the simple fact that you might put your head on the pillow at night and know I did exactly what God told me to do? Stuff that you can't buy, stuff you can't measure in an app. Notice it's not you might be enriched, it says you will be. Giving graciously isn't subtraction, it's multiplication in disguise. Because the kingdom runs on generosity, not scarcity. The math of heaven doesn't work like ours. You see, to give like God gives is a recognition that says the one who didn't measure love by what he kept, but by what he gave, is the model of Jesus. So our question is, isn't how much can I give, is that subtraction? But where can I start the next ripple, which is multiplication? Because somewhere out there on the other side of your generosity, somebody's waiting for proof that God hadn't forgotten about them.
See, and I'll say this at the end. We got about 10 minutes left if he goes the whole time. I don't know if he'll go the whole time or not, but I feel like my chair's low. Here we go. Okay. Anyway, what was I going to say? I'll say this again at the end, but one of the things we could have just scrapped. There's no reason to start in Nehemiah at all. And this could have been and I think it basically turned into a good topical sermon on what does it look like to live a Christian life and to care for other people. I mean, I don't know why we were in Nehemiah 6. I don't know why we were in Nehemiah 12. Doesn't make any sense at all. Those connections were sort of superfluous in the first place. It could have just been a message on Christian love and compassion and the results of that and the need for that. And it's basically what it's turned into. I don't know how this last 10 minutes are going to go. I can tell you that my brain, yes, I'm still hearing the piano and it's driving me crazy. I'm not going to let that go. I'm not going to let that go. But I think, yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why we're in Nehemiah 6 and 12. It's just odd to me that that's what we used.
And remember, church, we are plan A, and there is no plan B. It's us. Now watch this. You say, Chuck, I'm broke. I'm broke as Joe's turkey. I don't have any money. Can you pray? Well, yeah, Chuck, I can pray. How would you want me to pray? That you'd be a part of helping us double kingdom impact over the next 3 years. Well, Chuck, I can do that. Well, would you commit to do it each morning and be a part of that? Well Chuck, I don't have any money. I'm going to say that again. Chuck, I don't have any money. Okay. Can you serve? Well, Chuck, I'm pretty busy. That's not what I asked. Can you serve? But Chuck, I'm broke. I don't have any money. Well, what if the God of all creation said, would you give $1 a week? Yeah, but Chuck, that's not 10%. Jesus came and didn't give a hoot about your percentages, y'all. He cares about your heart. Percentages and decimal points and commas and zeros, that's not the heart of Jesus. Jesus cares about your heart. If he says give $1 a week, he's going to bless you and he's going to enrich you and he's going to do something in your life you cannot explain. Well, Chuck, I'm kind of embarrassed to do it. Well, you're embarrassed that you did what God told you to do? Seriously? Yeah, but Chuck, these examples on this little thing you gave me, bro, somebody's going to give $2,000 weekly, $104,000 yearly, $312 over 3 years, $312,000. I'm like, yeah.
Okay, so this is where, again, I get it. I'll say this and you can agree, disagree, hate it, like it. I don't care. This is where the big megachurch model sort of gets me a little bit, is because instead of just preaching, we are now preaching a sermon with the intent to, here's the action now. We've preached the whole time, and this is now this, for lack of a better term, the selling point. Now, again, I get it. You have to have money to do things. I get that. You have to remind people sometimes of what it means to be generous. I get that. This just seems like such a weird way to do it, though. And then, again, the Catholic way is no better, right? They had almsgiving. It was like if you didn't give, you were excommunicated. Also, not a good system. So I can appreciate what Chuck is talking about as far as God just cares about your heart, right? And so it comes down to, I think, the better way to do this. And I'm no mega church pastor. I'm no big pastor trying to, raise thousands or millions of dollars to do something. So what do I know? I'm just saying that I know what I've seen pastors do before. And again, much smaller churches where they'll say, this is our need. This is the need. This is not going to happen probably without you. And if you would like to see this happen, just to be frank, this is what we need. This is the dollar amount. Our transcripts of money are out there in the lobby for anybody and everybody to see. So you know where we're financially at. I'm just letting you know, if you want to give to this is what we need. And just leave it at that. And make it more of an announcement than a whole sermon. Because when you make it the whole sermon, it seems a little, it comes off across like, this wasn't even really a sermon. This was like a sales pitch. Even if it's not a sales pitch. I get Chuck's point. I've said this 2-3 times during this sermon. You can tell that Chuck loves people. Chuck wants people to know Jesus. That is the engine that drives the car. Chuck also knows that it takes money to do things in this world. And so he's just combining those two things, reminding you that we need to reach people, and to reach people, we need dollars. And here's your opportunity to give. I get it. I don't know if doing a whole sermon on it is necessarily the best way to go about it. That's me. That's methodology, right? That has nothing to do necessarily, though it does tie into the sermon. We'll talk about it. What do you guys think? I don't know. I don't know why I'm opposed to it. I never had a negative experience with it. I just don't like it.
Praying somebody will. Yeah, well, Chuck, let me be clear. That ain't me. Well, let me be clear. That ain't me either. But I can do some of that. And you put a bunch of us doing something, you got a lot of people doing a lot. You triangulate it and let God in the mix of it, the one who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, the next thing you know, we're changing the world. And from right here, little old Sugar Hill, you see the ripple of revival happening in our schools, in our homes, in our men, in our mamas, in our single parents. You see it happening in our businesses, and you start seeing it in our municipalities. And the next thing you know, people aren't talking about the church, they're talking about Jesus. They're talking about the goodness of God. And they're talking about how his presence can't be hidden. That's what we're talking about. So you say, Chuck, can you get super plain? What am I supposed to do? I'm going to ask you to take this card.
And see, I can appreciate him saying what he just said, because the idea is, again, it's not about all the stuff we have. It's about what we're doing with that stuff. And I get it. Again, I think this is complicated. As pastors, anytime you ask for money, I don't know one pastor that likes doing it. But yeah, I don't. It's methodology. It's, again, methodology.
And begin praying about what God would have you do to be a part of this. And today, next Sunday, and the Sunday after that, we want to remind you to just do this and give it to one of our ushers, drop it in one of the offering boxes on the way out, give it to me or, Beth or somebody, Leah or somebody. And you say, but Chuck, I want to say it again, I'm broke. And I get it. By the way, if you're that person, can I just have your attention here real quick? Listen, I'm about to lose you. Y'all come back real quick. If you're that person who's had a bad experience in church because you've had to say to somebody, I stopped going to church because all they do is want my money, I want you to hear this pastor say this with as much love and as much mercy as I can. Keep your money. Don't taint this offering with guilt and shame. God doesn't press down and overflow out of guilt and shame. He presses down and overflows because of a heart of gratitude. So it's not about guilt or shame. But I believe with all my heart, the Lord set this church up for such a time as this. He'll make a radical difference for the kingdom. Let's be found faithful. I'm so grateful for y'all. I can't believe I get to do what I do. I'm 66 now. And can I tell you, I got more passion, more energy for this work than I've ever had in my life. I love this place more than I ever have. And I'm so convinced that the Lord's got a great work in store for this community, where we see people come to know Jesus time after time after time, and you are telling your story of your whacked out, messed up life, and you stop me in the hallway and say, you know what, Chuck, God used my whacked out, messed up life, and that's my neighbor that got baptized. And that's my neighbor who showed up to hear about Jesus. Come on, y'all. It didn't get any better than that. Heavenly Father, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, he's ending. Okay, so let's go back over the screen. Okay. Focus down the middle here. The three things we look for every single time. Did he read the text? No, I mean, yes, but no. I mean, we covered what? Nehemiah 6 verses 15 through 15 and 16. We covered 2 verses. And then in Nehemiah 12, we covered a verse, and then he read a verse from the gospel. I don't remember where it was. So, like, maybe, yeah, technically speaking, we read some text. Do we exegete the text in the context culture, bring out the application for the modern believer? Not really at all. Were there applicable things that he said in the sermon that were good, helpful, and tied into the scripture somewhere? He just didn't mention it? Yes. That definitely happened. Did he preach the gospel of Jesus Christ? No, but the assumption, you get this, and again, I've mentioned this, the longer we do this, the more this is pretty apparent. I've actually noticed this even in my own preaching, is that whenever you're preaching to people that you know are believers, and you are going to mention the gospel, like when it comes up, like innately within the text, or whenever, like, unless you like know for sure, like, oh, this needs to be talked about today, or people need to be reminded of it today. And so he didn't do that, but I don't know within this whole thing. I mean, he's talking the whole time about things that are going to be geared toward members of that church or people that are believers. So he doesn't, again, need to. You could have brought up the gospel again to remind people of what they've been saved from and what they've been saved to. Could have done that. We didn't. But again, that's more like preparation. Like what are you going to include? What are you not going to include? So, no, he didn't read the text. No, he didn't exegete the text. No, he didn't preach the gospel. He did bring in some. I want to give him accolades where I can. He did bring in, like I said, the sermon itself could have been a really good topical one. I still don't feel like it was a good topical one because we didn't really tie those verses together. But it could have been a really good topical sermon on generosity and giving that come from a changed heart, and how that sort of lived out and demonstrated in the world. I mean, I think we could have probably used some passages from James to do that. We probably could have used some passages from some of John's writings probably to do that. I mean, nothing's coming to mind like right away, but I think James speaks a lot about that. I'm sure there's a couple parables of Jesus we could have probably pulled from in that regard. We didn't do that. So no, and no. I think here's the positive, Chuck, in case you ever see this, because at this point there's been pastors that see these reviews that I would have never imagined saw them. So I'm just going to assume from here on out the people I do reviews on see them. I think Chuck loves Jesus, obviously. I think he wants people to know Jesus. I think his passion is for that to happen. That's like his, like the one, like the target on the wall is that. What is it going to take to get that done? And so, and that's what we should want as believers. How do we get an unbeliever to the feet of Jesus? And this sermon was really around that. and about the finances that it might take to do that. But like, I just feel like we came at it like this is why I'm not like, ugh, like this sort of like, it could have been better. Because I feel like we came at it from sort of, we flanked, like you flanked us, where we're talking about like, it's not building walls, it's building faith. It's not, funding mortar, it's funding something out. Like whatever the word play that you use, like we're going through this and we're listening to a sermon. And then at the end, it's like, we need money. Like, I just feel like we got flanked. I feel like it was like a jump scare at the end. Like we're like, oh, this is a sermon. And then it's just like, oh, figure out what you want to pay. I just feel like that, yeah, like that needs to be, maybe this is methodology. That needs to be straightforward. Like I need to know that's what I'm getting into when I'm getting into it. And I'm not just like walking down the hall and you're like, hey, how much you want to donate? Yeah, I don't know, preference, I guess, on that one. I'll end with this, just so you know exactly where I stand here. I think Chuck loves Jesus. I think he wants people to know Jesus. I don't think this sermon was particularly great. I think there's a lot of ways we could have come at this from a teaching perspective that could have been better. But again, I'll go back to what I said about midway through. I think there's elders that are like qualified elders that have gifts in different areas. And sometimes there's churches that are built completely around the idea that that elder is not a teaching elder. He's a shepherding elder, and they prefer that. Not going to say if that's good or bad, even though I've already kind of stated like what I think the perfect team is. But I think that's, yeah, I think that's probably what's going on here. Again, so nothing against Chuck. I think Chuck loves Jesus, wants people to know Jesus. Can't base the whole thing on Chuck, because that's not what these are about anyway, by the way. In case you are new here and you have literally gotten this far, an hour and 16 minutes into this, and you're like, this guy's just super negative. This isn't even about Chuck. Chuck is like the example here. I'm just qualifying my words in case Chuck or anybody close to Chuck sees this. I think he loves Jesus. I think you love Jesus. I do. I think you're a faithful, probably pastor of the Word of God. You want people. I'm just saying the structure could have been better. I'm a sermon nerd. I just think the structure could have been better. I think there was a better way to prepare this in order that it came across clear. That's just me. And it's not like negative, good or bad. I just think that's where we're at. I feel like I'm now trying to qualify my words, in which I don't like that about myself. So we're going to stop. If you like this, go ahead and like this video. If you think it's helpful and would like to share it with people, go ahead and do that. If you're not subscribed, we do this every single week with all sorts of different people. Again, if you want to support us and get these early ad-free, you can become a patron to do that. If you want to suggest a sermon, go ahead. You can do that. Email me at Michael, Michael, at thehonestYouthPastor.com, and you can suggest it via that way. I'll talk to you later.